Greetings and the best of salutations. That would be prayer, power, peace, patience, and prosperity. Crime and punishment. It is said that pride goes before the fall, and a haughty spirit before destruction. I've said that society is under social reconstruction. Our feelings are becoming desensitized, our thoughts demoralized, our attitude dehumanized, our language devitalized, and our behavioral activity destabilized, which means we're dealing with a spirit of apathy. It is said in a writing that the primary theme of crime and punishment is alienation. It says that under the North American Constitution, expressed by some people, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We're all born with the same faculties and the same consciousness. I could be extreme in saying that, but needless to say, the difference is the manner and way in which we use our consciousness and our faculties. What is strange to me that when humankind use their mental faculties and their physical abilities to put people at odds with one another. Yes. I often realize and come to conclude that the biggest crime you can commit, because it spreads corruption, is fraud. Some religious teachings it said not to be pretentious nor to speak presumptuously. Then again, as it says in the book, don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought to. So we're dealing with a sense of arrogance. I hear arrogance too, apathy and arrogance. You hear those two, apathy and arrogance. Not to mention you hear alienation. Yes. I hear the word that's being thrown around called accountability, as well as transparency. Accountability, huh? Moral cultural decline, lack of accountability. When you go to a bank and you put something in, you want something in return. If you put something in, mental labor precedes physical labor. Orientation precedes education, and discipline precedes knowledge. A cultivating system. What are we cultivating? I often say that the battleground is ideological and the war is psychological over one's philosophical views. Alienation. primary theme of crime and punishment. Is it so that pride separates us from the society? Is when one sees him or herself superior to all other people. Dealing with the origin of crime and punishment, and we see the residuals of it, the impact that it has. That was a movie that was pretty interesting, called Caesar, and it was a movie about apes. And what was interesting about that, he was put in a place where all other apes were. He was raised as humans would raise him, and he had clothes as humans had on, and he was placed amongst apes due to the fact of he was growing up, and it's good to be amongst his own kind. And the other apes saw that he came in there with clothes on, and they seemed to took offense to that, and they snatched off his clothes and says, "Man, you are one of us. You're one of us." But he wind up freeing them because they didn't feel as though it was proper for them to be confined. Who wants to be confined? Who wants to be economically strapped? Some people just don't feel this appropriate when it comes to accessibility to wealth and the distribution of it, of the resources that some will have more than others. Feelings of alienation. And if the other feel superior and the other feel inferior, then the one that's inferior or wants a taste of feeling superior, and therefore a crime will be committed, or could be the residuals of that which has been committed come from alienation. But the crime is not only in the alienation, but alienating him or herself and thinking that he or she is superior to others. That's the crime. To all other people. And where we feel as though that we can't relate to one another because the faculty that has been given us is the ability to learn how to reason. And what happened is when one feel superior than the other, and his personal philosophy, or a person's personal philosophy, is that he see other people as just merely tools and uses them to his own ends. So people are responding and reacting due to the extent of the damage and the injury that has been done to his or her humanity. Alienation, a change of attitude must take place. When one think of himself more superior than others. And if you look at what is called groups of people who is denied certain opportunity when getting the opportunity to do certain things, in any discriminatory racist, if I may use that language, country or society, is that they excel. That they excel. So, the crime and the punishment. You create the crime when it comes to alienating yourself, feelings of alienation, when pride separates you from the society, from others, and how a person sees him or herself as being superior and cannot relate or get along with other people. So we seem to be at a point where we are unable to relate and get along with one another. And we are maybe not dealing with a certain type of punishment that is being displayed, not only on others, but could be a punishment that is being displayed that was learned by the one who thinks he or she is superior to others. And then we deal with family traditions, cultural traditions, or family traditions, culture backgrounds, and then that also can affect us. Individual experiences can affect us as well. Then you have to look at trends, principles, institutions, cultures, customs, and then we have leadership. As I said earlier, that there are societies under social reconstruction where our feelings are becoming desensitized, our thoughts demoralized, our attitude dehumanized, our activity is becoming destabilized, dealing with a spirit of apathy, alienation, and arrogance. Let's look at some of these definitions. I call them 5 learning disabilities. Alienation, lack of sympathy. Lack of sympathy. Interest and enthusiasm. When one's environment has become ill-nurtured, hostile, and non-caring, he or she will be more likely to take on the identity of the environment. No one cares. Why should I? Still dealing with crime and punishment. I've often said that we're not a product of our environment, but we're a product of the decisions that we made. I'm not saying the environment does not play a part. E5 learning disabilities. Let's say feelings of inadequacy. Feeling or not, I'm not good enough, or one's instability. We're dealing with, if one was a doctor in the psychology field, they would deal with what they call mood instability. Mood instability. Being unstable. Yep. Then we can go further and further on, and when it comes to relationships or whatever. So yeah, to deal with life and deal with self-doubt, lack of self-worth. I often said that I promote the value of self-worth in myself as well as in others. When you have done the best that you could in life, and life experiences continue to beat you down, you ask yourself the questions: am I good enough? The third social learning disability is grievance. I believe it was Dr. Clark says that the African American education came out of was birth out of grievances. I recently wrote a book called Overcoming Seemingly Disappointments, the Burden of Seemingly Disappointments and Grief. The grief of seemingly disappointments. But grievances, there is a sense of deep-seated resentment, self-hatred, and disdain we have for ourselves, we have for humanity. We deal with unhealthy anger. A wise man said about anger, he says, anger is the punishment you give yourself for somebody else's mistake. Animosity. I say we must go through conciliatory healing to overcome animosity and distrust. Frustration, anxiety. Anxiety is a result of stress. I often said that social stress leads to mental pain, and mental pain leads to physical harm. Impacted anger is usually directed at the wrong people, misuse, aggression. We must learn not to continue to paint a broad brush. We're all not the same. We must go beyond race, class, gender, religion, and politics. There must be a filter or a fitted release point as it pertains to this deep-seated resentment, self-hatred, and disdain that some of us have for ourselves. The fourth social learning disability is discrepancies. Lack of compatibility prevents us from learning how to reason with each other. And we must learn to reason from the premise of conversation. Reason, there's two struggles for me, progression versus regression, and common sense versus nonsense. Reason with each other sensibly and respectably. Communicate with each other. Body justice is a certain way, and people communicating. Some people can receive it wrong. But some people are going through things that you don't know that they're going through. Then you take it the wrong way. It's a human tendency. We go through things, that we're trying to deal with. And some people give the impression that they're well. But they are well as they can be, based upon what they have went through and going through. The words we use to communicate is important. We need to learn how to coexist with each other without conflict. And some people say conflict is good. I often say conflict is you trying to con an image or a picture or something that you want to display to the people how you want to be seen. Well, we must start with self. The challenge is to learn to live with yourself, to live with each other, to live with yourself, to live with each other. But the soul is living in us. You have to live the soul. The soul is living in us. Yes. Live with the soul that is in you. If I'm using that, forming that correctly. Respect that. Respect yourself. Be happy with yourself. I've learned that happiness is the joy that you feel when you're in pursuit of your potential. I believe that was Imam Wandin Muhammad said that. And I often say that we're here to reach our full potential. Not to reflect carelessness or callousness, to move from sympathy to empathy. Yeah. And that's how we're able to deal with the spirit of apathy. Kwame Ture said the duty of the conscious is to make the unconscious aware of their unconscious behavior. Because we know vanity is the enemy of consciousness. Well, they said that royalty is in blood. Blood is a society. Royalty is really how we treat one another. All religious faiths can agree. Treat people how you want to be treated. All humans can agree to that. And then indifferences. The final learning disability is indifferences. The lacking importance. Some say the enemy is the need for self-importance. But we must learn to deal with the principle of self-acceptance, to accept our own uniqueness. Each blade of grass is different. We must overcome devaluing ourselves, participating in foolish and destructive behaviors. And now we look at something when it comes to the key to success. There's a need meeting period that is designed to address incentives and motives of intent, that we become properly motivated, because I've learned that adequate cooperation leads to proper communication, and that's how you effectively coordinate your power. And by doing so, we are furthering the value of becoming reacquainted with our what? With ourselves, our humanity. The issue resolving period, or the need meeting period, now the issue resolving period. And I always say the issue is you, but the issue is character resolve, because the material that's been given to build on our humanity is character. And this addresses initiatives of one's determination and intent, that we expand our image of how of our worldview adequately and properly. The fourth key to success is the problem-solving period. It is designed to address influences, because the root word for problem in the Latin sense is the obstacle that's been thrown for us. I don't know if it was something said that it says the problem is not the problem, but the attitude that you have about the problem is the problem. The same, I think Einstein said, the same level of consciousness that created the problem won't solve the problem. That which occupies the mind conditions the mind. That's just the nature of the mind. The problem-solving period is designed to address one's influences. Environmental intent, that the vice that deals with the vices won't hinder nor prevent us from properly learning to reason from the premise of conversation, that once again we become reacquainted with ourselves. For me, there's four behaviors: vices, value, views, and virtues. Then the final key to success is the question and answering period. It's a question of governance that we do on a daily basis. Our man Zeus says you could teach people other languages, but you can't teach them how to govern, that they must learn for themselves. It is designed to readdress the indicators of one's directives of intent. You notice intent is in there, because intent is judged by your actions. And you see, on the question and answer period, it has to deal with virtue. And you see, we want to be adequately and properly doing so for further to become reacquainted with ourselves. So we're dealing with the question and answering period, and the key to success when it comes to crime and punishment, associated with crime and punishment, alienation, arrogance. The arrogance, the alienation of saying that he or she is more superior than the next individual. You got to deal with the attitude. We got to change the attitude. It was one more I forgot, letter A. I just can't remember what it was. And then we deal with the problem solving. We deal with influences. This is a teacher said we were born with dignity and nobility. Everything else we learned along the way. Maybe we're dealing with the compulsory education system. I don't know. Education is becoming compulsory, or it's compulsory, and it makes us become very impulsive, and not even worrying about not concerned about the consequences that one are going about participating in doing something. And then the issue resolving, the deal with initiative. What is the initiative? What is the spark? What initiates? And some could associate that with some cognitive ability. And then the need meeting period, incentive. What is the incentive? What is the motive behind it? I think Dr. King says we can allow the means by which we live to outdistance the ends for which we live. In doing so, we have minimized the maximum rather than maximized the minimum. And when a thing becomes, when we come to a point in our life where we come an end within the end itself, that means we don't use anyone as mere tools. That means that we work together for the development of one's intellect, for the betterment of humanity, and cultivate a system knowing the importance of adequately and properly helping each individual to reach his or her full potential. And that is to move from sympathy to empathy. You can tell the collective psychology of one's mentality by what he or she produces. Until next time. Remy Wadamu Kevin, teachers of teachers, preachers of preachers, when it comes to reverence from the heart.